Well, it's that time of year again, and as you can see,
Ramadan is probably the most spoken about holiday in Islam, and probably the second most spoken about holiday in the world, second only to Christmas. And that's not a surprise at all. It's an entire month that's dedicated to fasting, getting closer to Allah, and just general self-improvement. But of course, the most spoken about thing is the actual fasting. And although that isn't all of what Ramadan is, there's actually a lot more to it. This video will be mostly dedicated to the physical benefits of Ramadan fasting, and basically everything you need to know about it, including some arguments against it that I'll debunk later on in the video. And specifically, I'll be reacting to a video made by David Wood, so stay tuned for that. By the way, if you have a prayer coming up and you've not prayed yet, please pause this video and go pray. This video is not going anywhere. You can watch it at any time, so please, go and pray if you have to. So first things first, what even is Ramadan? Most of you already know this, so I'm not really going to go deep into it, but Ramadan is basically the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar, where we try to spend an entire month dry fasting from sunrise to sunset. Apart from this, we also try to improve our practicing of the religion. We try to pray extra prayers, we may give extra charity, we try to do more good deeds, and if you're super dedicated, you might even go to the Tarawih prayers, which are at night just after the Isha prayer and usually take about 30 minutes to 2 hours to complete. A really common question, especially from non-Muslims, is why do we even fast? What's the point exactly? Why do we do it? You'll actually hear a lot of answers for this question, but the main and most important reason is very, very simple. It's just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do it, so we have to do it whether we want to or not. We just need to be submissive to Allah. We have to do whatever Allah tells us to, because that is what Islam is about. Islam is all about submission to God. But yeah, after you consider this, you can think about wisdoms or other benefits for fasting, such as the increased discipline, the increased faith, the general improvements that we make ourselves in our lives. But the main thing I'll be talking about today is the physical benefits of fasting. And there are 5 main things to consider: the effects on weight, the effects on your hormones, autophagy of the cells, cardiovascular improvements, and neurological/psychological improvements. First of all, weight. According to the vast majority of studies and meta-analyses, Ramadan fasting on average results in about a 5% body weight reduction after the fast is over, and the vast majority of that weight being water weight and fat. Some studies have even found an increase in muscle mass in those who did resistance training during the month of Ramadan. But yeah, I would just say that if you work out, you should probably just cut during Ramadan. Bulking will be very hard for you. But anyways, this study also compared Ramadan fasting to regular intermittent fasting, and they found that people doing regular intermittent fasting on average lose more weight than people doing Ramadan fasting. And this actually isn't at all surprising, because the vast majority of people fasting in Ramadan probably aren't actively thinking about losing weight. They just happen to have restricted calories because of the shorter eating window. We have less time to eat, so we're probably not able to get as many calories in, even though we're eating the same foods. Whereas people doing regular intermittent fasting with the intention of losing weight are probably trying to eat healthier foods, low carbs, very lean, low calorie, etc. And they're probably also working out and exercising to, help with losing fat. So yeah, Ramadan will help you to lose weight. Just please remember to, watch what you're eating during Ramadan, and also keep up a good diet once Ramadan is over. Because what happens with a lot of people is they lose fat in Ramadan and then they just gain it all back after. So just be careful, guys. We shouldn't be gluttons.
If you look at some of the studies done on Ramadan, you're going to see some mixed reviews. And I think the reason for that, because what you eat before and after you fast is going to make or break your success. If you are eating a lot of junk food, refined carbohydrates, that is going to greatly inhibit these amazing effects that you could achieve if you added keto-friendly foods, low carb, during the meals.
But alright, the next one is hormonal effects. And most of these are actually caused by changes in your circadian rhythm that just happen naturally as a result of Ramadan. You tend to get most of your calories in a shorter time frame, most of which are digested at night during sleep, after iftar, and then in the morning after suhoor. And so because of this change in your circadian rhythm and also in your food timings, hormones like HGH are produced more. The exact reason for this isn't fully known, but we do know that it is linked to your sleep and it is linked to your diet, both of which are influenced by Ramadan fasting. I will put some info up on screen. And yeah, HGH helps to regulate your metabolism, and it actually stimulates muscle growth and repair, which is really cool. And that is probably why you do see some people, not losing any muscle during Ramadan, and some people even gain muscle. But that's only, of course, if you eat enough protein and do enough exercise. Anyways, fasting also increases glucagon levels, and this hormone basically promotes the release of glucose from your glycogen stores. And this helps to maintain blood glucose levels and to provide energy while you're fasting. And so yeah, glucose is basically basically like the primary energy source that your body uses to function. And what glucagon does is it basically stimulates the body to break off glucose from the long chains of glucose, which is called glycogen. And yeah, glucagon, along with some other hormones, also stimulate lipolysis, which is similar in that it causes the breakdown of fats into energy in your body. And this is basically the main reason why you lose fat during Ramadan, or basically why you ever lose fat at all if you're at a caloric deficit. But yeah, there's also adiponectin, which is secreted by the body's cells as a result of lipolysis, or the breakdown of fats. Anyways, adiponectin, along with glucagon and HGH and some other hormones, stimulate and regulate autophagy. And autophagy is a very complicated process, but in short, it involves destroying old and damaged organelles and recycling their components to make new organelles, or to make new cells, or to use as energy. And I've got some details on screen if you want to know more. But in simple terms, a little bag forms in the cell and it wraps around the unneeded organelles, and then it breaks down the organelles, and then that bag dissolves and all of the biomolecules are released back into the cytoplasm, where they are then reused. So yeah, autophagy can help us to get rid of goofy, damaged organelles, or things like degraded proteins and other things like that, in order to keep our body working at maximum efficiency and optimal conditions. But now, the cardiovascular benefits. There are many cardiovascular benefits to fasting. One of them is lower systolic blood pressure, or the pressure exerted on your arteries when blood is pumped out of your heart. There are a few reasons for this, but the main one is Alright, so I made a bunch of massive mistakes here, so I'm just gonna, re-record this part. The main reason why you have lower blood pressure in Ramadan is because you have less insulin, right? So that makes your blood vessels relax, it reduces the pressure, so there's basically more space for your blood to pump. And you tend to eat less sodium in Ramadan because you're eating less sodium, therefore less water retention, your blood has less water in it. And there's a few other reasons, smaller reasons, like adiponectin, which apparently is very good for your heart health. Another slightly less impactful thing is actually dehydration. And some of your fluids are also used for hydrolysis of glycogen into glucose, since you have to use your energy stores rather than energy from food. Your blood has less water in it, and because it has less water, it's got a lower volume, and so it exerts a bit less pressure on the arteries, because there's literally less blood. And that's not me encouraging you to purposefully dehydrate yourself in Ramadan. This just naturally happens throughout the day. So yeah, make sure that during iftar and suhoor, have like 3 liters of water in total, because you will really regret it if you don't. If you don't, your blood pressure could drop so low that you start to feel dizzy, you start to feel sick, you might even faint, and you won't work properly because you're that dehydrated. Please don't be goofy. Just drink your water. Me, for example, when I'm fasting, I'm just always chugging water. I mean, I've got some water right now. I'm always chugging water, right? So I absolutely hate being dehydrated, so please don't let yourself be dehydrated. Don't let yourself be goofy. But yeah, fasting also improves your lipid profiles, or the amounts of different lipids in your blood. The main ones are HDL cholesterol, or the good cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, or the bad cholesterol, and triglycerides. Why they're good and bad doesn't really matter right now. I'll put some info on screen. It doesn't matter! But yeah, fasting reduces LDL cholesterol and increases HDL cholesterol. And yeah, the last one I'll mention today is the psychological/neurological benefits. Okay, so now that I'm looking more closely at some studies, the research on the psychological benefits is actually not that conclusive. The best I can find is that Ramadan can cause a decrease in depression and in anxiety. Sometimes it can reduce cortisol levels, but other studies contradict that. So I don't know, I guess it really just depends. Some people sleep more and have a better diet, so by default they just feel better. But personally, I think the self-restraint you can get from fasting can be really good for your mood, especially if you keep it up after Ramadan. Another thing is wasting time. You tend to do less of that during Ramadan because you've got more taqwa. And that kind of ties into dopamine detoxing. If you scroll less and play less video games, etc., you're less desensitized, so you can enjoy the small pleasures in life a little bit more. And yeah, these neurological benefits are probably part of the reason why in Ramadan you usually see a much better atmosphere among fasting Muslims than you do usually. We're all much closer to each other, not just because we spend more time with each other, which we do actually because of Taraweeh, iftar, praying salah at the masjid more often, and so on. But also because our brains will be more likely to feel better with people because of the oxytocin and the other benefits with your mood. But anyways, those are all the scientific benefits that I'll mention today. I'm sure that apart from this, there are many more benefits that I have not mentioned. And yeah, be aware that not all of what I mention in this video is guaranteed to be 100% true. Partially because I'm not perfect, I'm not the best at researching for this video. And also because studies on Ramadan may be affected by extraneous variables. You know, they do try to account for this, but you know, it's hard to account for things like diet, sleep, how long the fasting period is, and so on. Which is why if you look at some individual studies, you might get contradictory evidence. You know, one study will say, Ramadan makes you so fat, stop fasting. And then another will say, Ramadan makes you super skinny, guys, stop fasting. You know what I mean? You don't just look at individual studies. You're better off looking at meta-analyses, because meta-analyses are basically like a study, but they check several studies, right? They test for variables, they try to isolate things, and they try to give a more general picture. But even meta-analyses can make mistakes, you know? So don't trust everything you see on the internet. But all I can say is, even if 50% of what I said today is wrong, which I don't think that much is wrong, Ramadan is good for you, alright? If you do it properly. So yeah, inshallah, this video may be valid enough. Do remember though, the physical benefits are the smallest part of Ramadan. The most important part is improving yourself, improving your relationship with Allah, increasing your good deeds and decreasing your bad deeds. And also you're supposed to intend to maintain that throughout the year. You know, you don't just, you know, pray 5 times a day in Ramadan and then afterwards just quit it. You have to stay good even after Ramadan, please guys. And that's a reminder for myself as well, you know, I'm not perfect, of course. Anyways, now I'm just going to give you a few more pieces of useful information, and then I'm going to debunk a bunch of very common criticisms against Ramadan, all of which come from this video by David Wood. So the first thing is that a lot of non-Muslims say, oh no, I can't believe this, Muslims can't drink water throughout the day? They're gonna die, it must be so hard to not eat or drink all day. Wallahi, it's not as bad as it sounds. The first few days might be a little bit hard, but after that, if you eat well and you eat enough, and you also have 2 to 3 liters of water during the eating period, you're gonna be completely fine throughout the day. The hunger will be ignorable. The thirst will just be, you know, normal standard thirst that you might feel, you know, after a sport or just before you have some water. It only really gets hard 1 to 2 hours before iftar. You know, that's when we all start watching the mukbangs or wasting time, astaghfirullah.
You shouldn't be watching my channel. You should actually unsubscribe from my channel and start watching mukbang videos.
It's very distracting during those times, but apart from that, we're mostly okay if you're used to it. And the great thing is that, you know, if that is like 2 to 3 hours away, you're not gonna break your fast, you know, you've gone that far, you may as well continue, you know what I mean? And yeah, another thing is that not all Muslims are obligated to fast during Ramadan. You know, children below the age of puberty don't have to fast. Old people and sick people don't have to fast. Pregnant women and breastfeeding women are also exempt. Also, travelers are exempt. All of those people do not need to fast at all, but they can if they want, and the fast would be valid. The only exception is menstruating women. When a woman is on her period, she is exempt from fasting and her fast becomes invalid, even if she does it anyway. What's interesting is that science agrees with all of these exemptions. You know, children need more food to grow, so restricting their calories isn't always a great idea. And the children may not be mature enough to have the discipline to actually fast and to know right from wrong. So I think it would be wrong to expect that of them. And then old people and sick people would probably usually be harmed by fasting, again because of the lower calories. And then pregnant women and breastfeeding women are also exempt. I don't exactly know why scientifically. It may be something to do with the hormones, it may be to do with the caloric deficit, I don't really know. But then there is travelers. This applies less nowadays, but back in the day, travelers would do a lot of walking. They'd be in the sun a lot, they'd be burning a lot of energy, and probably sweating a lot. So fasting could cause them heat stroke or something like that. Subhanallah. Anyways, that's all of the side notes. Before I go on to debunking David Wood's video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. If you do it for even 1 month, you'll gain permanent access to my members only Discord server. And I'm not gonna toot my own horn or anything, but I will say that it's a very nice and very fun Discord server, and yeah, I would appreciate it a lot if you support me even for just 1 month. But anyways, onto the video.
Well, it's that time of year again, and as you can see, I'm fasting, Islam style. When most people think of fasting, they think of not eating. They think of abstaining from food. Islamic fasting is what we would ordinarily call feasting. For comparison, the closest thing non-Muslims have to Ramadan in the US is Thanksgiving dinner. That's our big meal of the year. Imagine having 2 Thanksgiving dinners per day, every day, for an entire month. Pretty gross, right? Pure gluttony.
Alright, so a common theme in this video by David Wood is that Muslims don't actually fast. According to him, we just have 2 to 3 massive meals every single day, where we just eat obscene amounts of delicious food. And this is just inaccurate in 2 ways. ways. First of all, no matter what you say, Ramadan fasting is actual fasting, even if we do feast. Because technically speaking, the word fasting by definition just means not eating for any period of time. And come on, we fast for between 10 and maybe 18 hours during Ramadan. So scientifically speaking, even if we eat nikocado avocado level calories, during the eating window, this is still a fast and still gives us some of the benefits of fasting. Obviously not all of them, it'd be much worse, but it's still something. But most importantly, not all Muslims feast like that. Many hadiths state that we should not eat like that. We have to eat slowly with normal or maybe slightly larger portions because it's Ramadan. And those who ignore that aren't representative of the religion of Islam or even of the majority of Muslims. Those people have just been influenced by today's culture of consumerism and prosperity. It's on them and it's on society, right? This rampant gluttony and overconsumption is a recent Western phenomenon. Now that we have cheap food and the ability to feast if we want to, you can't be surprised that hungry people will have the desire to feast. This is just people, this is just humans, this is just psychology. But Islam itself does not condone this. Next one.
Ramadan fasting is what we might call trans fasting. It's feasting that identifies as fasting. Milk. See how easy it is to call something by a completely different name from what it actually is?
It is fasting, scientifically. It is still fasting. Even if we eat like Matt Stoney, like Beard Meats food, scientifically speaking, it is still fasting.
Muslims who aren't exempt for some reason are required to abstain from food, beverages, and sexual intercourse from dawn to sunset for the entire month. In practice, many Muslims simply reverse their day-night sleeping schedule. They sleep during the day and stay up eating all night.
This is just completely unrepresentative and untrue. I mean, you're literally lying to your own audience who you should be honoring and respecting by telling them the truth. Obviously, 99% of Muslims don't do this. The vast majority of Muslims and almost all Muslims who live in the West are just practically unable to reverse their sleep schedule. We have day jobs and school that completely prevents us from shifting our schedule like this. Sure, we could get a night job or something, but that is too much of a faff and, nobody's gonna do that and we don't have to do that because fasting is actually not that hard. And we don't try to make it sound hard, at least the physical aspect of it, Physically, fasting maybe for the first few days it's hard, but after that, it's, we get used to it, right? We don't need to shift our schedule like that. We can, go by the day and be, relatively alright with it. But anyways, in some Muslim countries, yes, there are changes in the daily schedules to help people sleep more. But this is not for food reasons, because as I said, it's not actually that hard, you're not starving. The food we have at iftar and suhoor is enough to make us not feel like we're dying, even if we have normal sized portions. The reason for these changes in schedule are because of the super long Taraweeh prayers. They can get up to 2 or maybe 3 hours long, and in the summer they can get super late. And in addition to that, we're advised to spend more of the night praying, to, make dua during the night, reciting and learning the Quran, etc. And because of all of this, to prevent major sleep deprivation, we simply have more naps during the day if that is convenient for us. Which is actually scientifically beneficial for you, right? Polyphasic sleep has actually been shown by recent studies to be quite beneficial for you. Some historians even suggest that polyphasic sleep was a very common form of sleep back in the day, with it usually being biphasic sleep. Monophasic sleep, or sleep in which you only have one sleeping window, only became the standard recently when we switched from being an agricultural society to an industrial and now a technological society. One last thing I'll add, the fasting periods are usually between about 10 and 18 hours long, and with all the 5 daily prayers and our other daily obligations, sleeping through all of that is practically impossible. So David, I'm sorry, but not only is your argument completely a non-argument, but it completely crumbles at every point from every single angle. Sleeping during the entire day is not possible. Sleeping through some of the day is actually good for you. And sleeping through some of the day is not usually done for food or hunger related reasons, because fasting is not that hard. Next one.
My ordinary everyday schedule would almost qualify as Islamic fasting. As many of you know, I have 5 sons. 2 of them have been on life support their entire lives. They have a rare genetic muscle disease. We can't leave them alone. So I stay up with them all night, every night. I sleep during the day. My last meal before I go to sleep is around 5 a.m. So I'm done eating before sunrise. My first meal of the day is around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. True, that's a little before sundown right now, but it would be very, very easy for me to shift my schedule slightly so that I only eat breakfast after sundown. Now, if I were to shift my schedule slightly, eating my first meal after sundown and eating my last meal before sunrise, can anyone say with a straight face that I would be fasting? according to Islam, I'm almost fasting all year long.
Alright, so this video was uploaded on the 22nd of March 2023. And I'm sure it was recorded a bit before then, let's say 2 to 3 weeks prior. And you'll notice that this is just about at the end of winter, you know, in early March, or, you know, when this video releases actually. And yeah, the day is relatively short, fasting is relatively easy. So what David is saying here might be true. He maybe could switch his schedule with little difficulty right now. But there's a few things he's forgetting here. First of all, we have a dry fast, meaning you can't drink, right? And even if you're awake for only a couple hours during the fasting period, you're gonna feel the thirst and you're gonna want to drink. That is willpower right there. Secondly, we don't just sit around all day just waiting to eat or eating. We take Ramadan as a month of self-improvement. You know, a lot of us pray an hour or two of Taraweeh after Isha. We try to pray at the mosque more often. We try to give a bit more charity. We try to read more Quran, pray more of the Sunnah prayers, break bad habits, etc. You know, some of those things get really difficult. And those who pray Taraweeh might know what it's like when you've had a bit too much food and you're really full during Taraweeh and you're falling asleep during prayer. That takes some discipline, right? And for the last thing, David Wood is either stupid or he's intentionally deceiving his audience. Because here he's talking about the winter when the days are relatively short and the fasting window is quite short. He's claiming that he could technically fast all year round, but he's forgetting about the summer where the days are much longer, sometimes as long as 18 hours. And yeah, many of you may not know this. I thought this was common knowledge, but you know, the Islamic lunar calendar is slightly shorter than the Gregorian calendar, which means that Ramadan changes every year. You know, it shifts back by about half a month every year. And so in about 25 years, Ramadan will be in the summer. And look at this, here's the prayer times for New York, where David lives, for June of this year, and that's the peak of the summer, right? Fajr is about 3:30 a.m. and Maghrib is at about 8:30 p.m. So the fasting period is 17 hours, and nobody can sleep through 17 hours of fasting. Sure, you could sleep through some of it, but we still need to pray 5 times a day, do our daily obligations, you know, go to school, go to work, etc. And now some funny jokes from our favorite joker, David Wood.
Wow, that is a delicious chicken sandwich. Ah! It's Chick-fil-A. It's a Christian chicken sandwich.
I'm just like, dude, like, oh my God, like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world?
I don't know what the intention behind this is. I don't know if he's trying to be funny or if he's being unfunny to be funny. But in any case, I've tried to laugh at some of these jokes and I just can't, you know? They're not unfunny, they're just not funny. The funniest thing he said was when he had the sip of Mountain Dew and he called it milk, but I don't think that even qualifies as funny.
According to scholars, Ramadan is Arabic for eating disorder. I think vimto is the Arabic word for diabetes.
These jokes are trying to be moist critical, but instead he's being morbidly obese with all the food he's eating. I mean, look at all of this food. I mean, here's a compilation of all the food he's eaten in this video.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
Gordita. Gordita.
And he's so funny that he even reused the same gimmick twice, you know, blank is Arabic for blank, like a true comedian. But if only David Wood actually knew Arabic, then maybe he would know what the Arabic word for vimto is. David is probably like most of us. He wants to learn how to read Arabic, but he just doesn't know where to start. I mean, look at all these lines and dots and squiggles. This is beyond David's mental capacity. Well, worry not, David, because the sponsor of this video is here to help. Furqan Academy is an online platform designed to help students improve their tajweed and learn the Quran from any level. Whether you're a complete beginner, you know, you don't even know alif, ba, ta, tha, or you're an intermediate, you know, you've memorized a couple of surahs, you can kind of read the Quran but not really, you know, you're kind of slow with it. Furqan Academy will help you to improve your tajweed. They'll give you a service that's exactly matched to your level of ability. I mean, before I had a lesson with them, I thought that my recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha was okay, but the amazing teacher there showed me my mistakes and he helped me to correct them. And he even gave me a homework task. He told me to write down the mistakes I made to, you know, go through them later. And you might not know this, but if you make a major mistake in Surah Al-Fatiha, your prayer might actually not be accepted, especially if it's a mistake that changes the meaning. So this is very, very important. Furqan Academy connects you one-on-one with teachers who you can have lessons with once a week or twice a week. You can have them for 30 minutes or for 45 minutes, whatever works best for you. And all of this is for a reasonable price. You can even get a free trial class if you'd like to. But anyways, if you'd like to support me and to increase your proficiency in Arabic, to improve your tajweed and to memorize more of the Quran, you can use the code YAN10 at checkout and you'll get 10% off your first 3 months. And that's JAN10 with no spaces. JAN10. Anyways, thank you to Furkan Academy, and now let's watch some more David Wood.
You may be wondering, David, why do you care about this trans fasting? Well, there are two main reasons I'm talking about this. One, Ramadan is destroying Muslims physically. And two, Ramadan is destroying Muslims spiritually. First, the physical. We don't need a prophet to tell us that filling your belly with horribly unhealthy food multiple times per day for an entire month every year is bad for you.
David, I invite you to show me just one verse in the Quran or just one hadith where we're instructed to eat tons and tons of unhealthy food in the month of Ramadan. We aren't instructed to do so. It's just what some people do when they're put in that circumstance, and that is due to their weakness. And you could say that Ramadan is at fault for putting people in that position. You know, the fasting kind of makes people more susceptible to overindulging and overeating like that. But I think that's invalid because almost anything can be an opportunity for sin or for something bad in general. You know, like if you haven't eaten all day, you're gonna want to eat more once you have food. But it's not all about the circumstance you're in. It's about how you discipline yourself to do the right thing. Ramadan is all about discipline. It's all about having the desire, noticing it, and just letting it pass. You have to be patient, right? People who meditate will be really familiar with this concept. That's the best thing you can do to build discipline and to let go of bad habits, you know? Notice a desire, feel it, and just let it go, you know? And yeah, criticizing Ramadan just because you desire lots and lots of delicious food is just goofy. Ideally, you shouldn't criticize, but if you're gonna put the blame on someone, the blame is on the people who can't stop themselves from eating so much, and on the people who make way too much food for iftar.
There's a sharp rise in hospital visits during Ramadan, many of them due to digestive problems.
Alright, later on David attempts to use science to debunk Ramadan, and the first article he provides is this one from CNN. So the first thing he talks about is rises in hospital visits during Ramadan, many of which come from digestive problems. Apparently this mostly happens due to dehydration, overeating, or lack of sleep. And all of this stuff is avoidable, you know? To prevent dehydration, drink more water. To prevent overeating, don't overeat. And to prevent sleep deprivation, just don't stay up when you don't need to. Or, you know, take naps or something. But realistically, these aren't massive problems that affect a lot of people. These are rare cases, which is why you only really hear about them when people are discussing the, you know, the negative effects of Ramadan. Also, everyone needs to remember that if you have an illness that, you know, makes you react badly to Ramadan fasting, you are exempt from fasting. If a doctor tells you that you need to abstain from fasting, it is completely permissible for you to not fast. So if any of these hospital visits are from people who already have some digestive issues or whatever, nobody should be surprised.
There's a surge in uncontrolled diabetes cases because of Ramadan.
The next thing he talks about is the surge in uncontrolled diabetes cases during Ramadan. And this is mostly because your blood sugar levels change drastically during Ramadan, as well as your glycogen, glucagon, and insulin levels. So a diabetic is likely to have an adverse reaction to Ramadan fasting, especially in severe cases, and that is why those people are exempt. And this article also talks about the rise of diabetes diagnoses during Ramadan. And if you're a dum-dum, you'll think, oh, so Ramadan equals you get diabetes, right? No, the reason for this is because, as I said, people with diabetes have an adverse reaction to Ramadan fasting. Right, so this fatty here, he's been eating like a pig all year round, and because of that, he's developed diabetes. And now he's trying to fast for Ramadan, and because he's an undiagnosed diabetic, he has an adverse reaction to it. If you have never been diagnosed with diabetes and you kind of develop it throughout the year, we won't know you have diabetes until you get it checked or until you have an adverse reaction, and then from there they're able to deduce that you have diabetes. And if you have an adverse reaction, may Allah protect us, you know, if it's not lethal, then after that you can just stop fasting, right?
Thanks to Ramadan, obesity is on the rise in Muslim countries.
Here David talks about an increase in obesity cases. And there's so many goofy things about just this 4-second clip, right? First of all, he says, thanks to Ramadan, obesity is on the rise in Muslim countries. This itself is so goofy. How can 1 month cause obesity, dude? They're not eating Nikocado avocado portions, right? Even if they were, that just wouldn't make sense. Sure, a lot of people overeat during Ramadan in our day and age, but these people are also overeating outside of Ramadan, probably more than they do in Ramadan. I mean, they've got like 10 extra hours to fill themselves up with food after Ramadan, right? And that is a they problem, but it's also an us problem because obesity is rising everywhere, alright? This has nothing to do with Ramadan. And in fact, most studies and meta-analyses say that Ramadan causes weight loss. Even in fatty bomb-bombs who eat a lot, there's gonna be a smaller eating window and therefore a caloric restriction. You know, it's very hard to go above your maintenance calories in Ramadan, especially if you sleep properly. It's funny because David Wood uses this article to debunk Ramadan, but the screenshot that he himself put up clearly states that experts agree that fasting itself is not the problem, so much as how it's practiced, right? And that completely agrees with my point. If it's Ramadan and you overeat and you somehow put on weight, the blame is completely on you, not on Ramadan. Next one.
Gulf countries are now among the fattest countries in the world. But as long as they don't eat pork, it's all halal, am I right?
Come on man, this is just a nothing burger, right? As I said, obesity rates are rising everywhere. And look at this, according to the World Obesity Federation, Gulf countries or Muslim countries make up only 2 of the top 15 fattest countries. That's Kuwait and Qatar, both of which are below America, right? And that's where you live, David. Also, how is someone gonna get America level obese just from 1 month? Even if there was no fasting in Ramadan, right? You can't get that fat just from 1 month. And remember, in Ramadan, you are not allowed to eat for a very long time, right? You'd not gonna gain that much weight, okay? It's not possible. And clearly for these people who are getting fat, this is a habitual thing for them that lasts year round. Clearly not a Ramadan issue. Very goofy point here, David.
Food retailers have to start stocking up at least a month before Ramadan in order to keep up with the increase in food sales. Food bills increase by 50 to 100% during the month of fasting. And depending on the area, food bills can increase much more.
First of all, this article seems really biased, and I'm sure its sources probably are as well. But if this is really true, again, it's not a Ramadan problem. It's the fault of the people who decide to overeat to that extent. Bear in mind, it wasn't always like this, right? And it's not like that for everyone. This is just a symptom of people's large amounts of disposable income and an even larger appetite. Also, who's to say that this stocking up of food isn't just stocking up for food that you'd only eat in Ramadan? Like dates, for example, those are most often eaten during the month of Ramadan because of the sunnah of breaking our fast with dates. There are also some more extravagant dishes that people might only eat during Ramadan or Eid. So it's a special time that calls for larger amounts of special foods. And that probably also explains the increase in food bills.
Medical journals still find this confusing. They say things like, surprisingly, weight gain and not weight loss was reported after Ramadan by Saudis.
Alright, so here he says that medical journals report an increase in weight. And that might be true for some of the studies, like the one here that he's mentioning. But remember, there are meta-analyses and larger amounts of studies that report the complete opposite. That's why you should always base your conclusions on a meta-analysis. Or maybe look at, bigger studies or more amounts of studies, because these things have a larger sample size. And the people conducting them usually omit studies that have large amounts of extraneous variables or biased samples or bad design, things like that. Like this one, right? Look, this study is based on self-reports of a convenient sample of female students living in Jeddah, right? If that isn't a biased, unrepresentative design for a study, I don't know what is. Anyone who knows anything about the scientific method will agree with me. But anyways, I'm not hating on this study in particular. I think David Wood is just taking it out of context. The study itself admits that outside of Ramadan, the Middle Eastern countries are witnessing an epidemic of obesity, like many other developed countries are. This study also states that Ramadan is theoretically a golden opportunity to adopt a healthy lifestyle and healthy dietary habits, which it is, but most people aren't taking the opportunity. Many people do though, right? And I think the point of this study is less to highlight how bad Ramadan is as a practice, but instead to highlight the need for change in people's daily eating habits within and outside of Ramadan.
There are tons of studies reporting these kinds of issues.
Yeah, maybe there are, but there are also way more studies that report positive effects. It's not about Ramadan, it's about how people do it. And nowadays, everyone is a fatty, so they do fatty things. You should be criticizing society for, facilitating this consumerist fatty mindset in the westernized world.
And when you point out what Ramadan is doing to the Muslim community, Muslims reply, but we don't all do that.
Yeah, because we don't all do it.
Okay, there may be exceptions, but the statistics show this is a massive problem everywhere Islam goes.
No, David, Ramadan is not the problem. The problem is people's dietary habits. Overeating is a problem everywhere, man, not just where Islam goes. As I said earlier, look at these obesity rates. Most of them are not Muslim countries.
Keep in mind that not everyone who's trans fasting can sleep all day. Some people have to go to work during the day after partying all night, but then they can't even have a sip of water while they're working.
No, we don't party all night. We have a meal, yeah, maybe some of us eat too much. Then we go pray Taraweeh and then we sleep. Maybe you do some other things in between, right? And yeah, you can't drink water while you're working, so just have water when you're allowed to. You've got a couple of waking hours that you can use to chug maybe 2 to 3 liters of water. It's not that hard. And some people get by with even less water, but of course that could cause some issues, as you'll see here.
Leading to a range of medical emergencies, heat stress, traffic accidents, and so on.
Alright, so we're back to the CNN article, and here he talks about heat stress, dehydration, and traffic accidents. Yes, these things do happen, but they wouldn't happen as much if people just slept more, ate a bit less, and drank more water. I hate that I keep having to say this, right? But this doesn't need to happen to anyone. People just need to take responsibility, drink more water, eat less, and sleep more, right? I know it's hard, but it's possible if you actually make the intention to actually do so, right? So stop staying up. I'm talking to my Muslim brothers and sisters right now, yeah? Ramadan is coming up. Make this the year where you eat normally, you don't be a fatty, pray Taraweeh, have your water, and sleep as early as you can, please.
But as long as they don't drink a beer, it's all halal. Am I right?
Again, here David is reusing the same joke that he already made like twice a few minutes ago, almost word for word.
But as long as they don't drink a beer, it's all halal. Am I right? Productivity drops between 35 and 50% during Ramadan.
Honestly, I can't even argue with this one, to be honest. I do find myself being less productive during Ramadan, but this month is not about productivity in the dunya. It's about getting closer to Allah. And we can make up for lost productivity after Ramadan is over. And remember, society is still moving and growing, especially in the Middle East, you know, with the Gulf countries nowadays. So, you know, it's not that bad.
There's also the spiritual. Muslims claim that they follow Jesus. What they really mean when they say this is that they follow what Muhammad said about Jesus. In Matthew 6, Jesus condemns religious practices that are meant to impress other people, acts of righteousness that are just for show. He talks about giving to charity and prayer, and then he says this about fasting. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you.
Alright, so here we've got another nothing burger. We don't try to show off our fasting. At least most of us don't. And we're not supposed to. I mean, a lot of the time during Ramadan, people just ask me, hey, Jan, do you want the Snickers? Do you want this? Do you want that? And I say, no, I'm fasting. And they say, it's still Ramadan? Because, you know, it's not that memorable, right? Because we don't just go around parading around everywhere saying that we're fasting, right? It's kind of forgettable, and I'd say you only really see this in groups of people that by default do degenerate stuff. And then they have that one Muslim guy there who suddenly switches up for the month. Another thing is that Islam promotes doing good deeds in secret, right? And no deed is accepted unless it's done with sincerity, just for Allah. If I fast just so some guy thinks I'm cool, right? Or if I pray extra in front of someone just so they think I'm really dedicated, those deeds are not accepted, right? And that is basically the same teaching from Matthew 6 that you're showing us. And by the way, some people might hear this and say, what? So Islam copied Christianity, clearly. No, okay, we believe that some of the Bible and some of Christianity was not corrupted, right? So what matches up with Islam in Christianity, we can say is from God, right? So clearly there's going to be some overlap. But it doesn't all overlap because a lot of Christianity is corrupted, right?
Notice, Jesus condemns fasting that's meant to be seen by others. If you're fasting in order to earn a reputation for righteousness, your reputation is the only reward you get, according to Jesus. Apart from that reward, your fasting is worthless. Imagine a religion that demands, as one of its 5 pillars of orthodox practice, an entire month of public fasting. It's not fasting in private. It's fasting that everyone sees and knows about and talks about. You're praised if you do it and blamed if you don't.
For most people, it just isn't that noticeable. So, David, I think you're just really goofing around here trying to get some more watch time. Anyways, you might say, well, why is it that when it's Ramadan, we hear about it so much on the internet? Well, that's just because it kind of is a big deal. It's a big event, and you'll see that most of these things are either halal memes that other Muslims can relate to, or non-Muslims crying about how hard fasting must be, or non-Muslims crying about how fast harding must be. But we don't go around parading about it. And yes, it is bad if you don't fast for Ramadan, because it's obligatory, and that's fine. It's good for you, it makes you a better person, you know, if you do it properly and mindfully, and you do everything else that's encouraged in Ramadan. And yeah, Allah says that you should do it, and therefore you have to do it. And therefore, it's bad if you don't do it. But it's also sunnah to fast on Mondays and Thursdays throughout the year. And a lot of people do it, and it's good for you, and we are not encouraged to boast about it. Anyways, I think the rest of this video is just goofiness. I don't need to debunk any of the rest of this video because I'm sure I've already said enough to render all of his points obsolete. But I'll say one thing, right? He goes on to say that Islam provides a framework for people to take out their psychopathy and their desires through sex slaves and terrorism. But Christians do or have done the same things in the past. There were the Crusades, the Christian sex slaves in Europe and in the Americas. The KKK were Christians, and even Hitler was a German Protestant. You always get bad people in religion, using their religion for bad things that actually go against their own religion. Bad people always find a way to make bad sects of every single religion, just to suit their own selfish desires. Anyways, that was it. The Science of Ramadan fasting, and also David Wood debunked. Thank you all so much for watching my videos and supporting me. May Allah bless all of you. Thank you so much. And a massive thank you to Furqan Academy, who sponsored this video and the previous video as well. You guys are amazing. And also the Patreons, right? Thank you all so much for your support. Your support is very, very helpful. And yeah, if you like this video, consider clicking this one or this one. Like, subscribe, share, and all of that stuff. And yeah, may Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.